up, guys? Welcome back to Allergic to Stupidity and Political Sundays. First of all, we can see that spring is here. I've been out in the garden. It's so nice. So, one of the things we want to talk about is figuring out which way you want to vote. And you know how I'm going to vote. I've told I'm liberal, have always been liberal. I like centralist policies. I like to balance between what the economy, what the big businesses need versus what the little guy needs, etc., etc. So, having said that, that's where I stand. So but I'm not going to convince you because I know people who will vote NDP. I know people who will vote Green. Just get up and vote. But one of the problems now with social media and the internet being so intertwined in our lives is being able to distinguish between facts and fiction or disinformation or misinformation. So not including the whole picture. So some leader says he's an idiot. Well, did you know the whole picture? Was he talking about the person who says he's an idiot? Or did they cut it off? He may have said, well, he's an idiot for putting the tariffs on, but they've only clicked the part that says he's an idiot. So it's getting that whole information, the whole picture. And one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is because there was a conservative candidate, or is a conservative candidate out in British Columbia. And what started rearing its ugly head were links that said the Liberal candidate's name. Join Joe Blow. And it would say the Liberals candidate's name /liberal.ca or some version of that. But when you clicked on it, it went directly to the Conservatives website. So your first knee-jerk reaction is that Conservatives being an idiot. How dare you? That's idiotic. And there was 4 or 5 websites that had been purchased that all looked like they belonged to the Conservative candidate for the riding. And Steve Boots is the first one that put me onto it because he said, this looks really suspicious, but I can't prove that it is the Conservative person who's doing it. And I went, if it is a Conservative guy, that's really low. But the Conservative guy discovered it was also happening. And he and the Liberal candidate of the riding together went to the RCMP and said, this isn't right. So they both put out messages going, this is my website, this is my website, these are the places you're going. So in that case, neither one of them was responsible for what happened. But as us individuals, we're going, if you're looking for the Liberals and you always end up with Conservatives, you're getting madder and madder at that Conservative guy. How dare he do that? And if you're Conservative, you're going, what loose blazes is going on? It just made that Conservative candidate look really bad. Irrelevant of policies, it makes him look really bad. And part of the problem is that when we go on our phones or we go on our computers, that's personal, individual journalism. And as much as I like Steve Boots, you can tell that he tries really hard, but it doesn't take a genius to realize he's a little much this way or that way. And he does rip all parties apart in his defense. He tries to be as neutral as possible. But it's individual journalism. And he does not have the time to do all the research that individual journalists that are getting paid to do that can do it. So it is my push for the RCMP, sorry, not the RCMP, the CBC. It's our Canadian Broadcasting Company. It is neutral as any journalist can be. My favorite show is about that. And it looks into something, not the day-by-day emergencies like the tariffs, but goes deeper. It takes a half an hour to examine just that. And they have done several of those, actually, between About That and Marketplace, that really delves deeply into whatever issue. And the one I've used with my students is access to your information and your data off your cell phones. And my students all look at their phones going, what? Not realizing how much they can actually get off of that. So the first thing I want to look at today is this guy. And let's just get him.
So we have to talk about this. This is not a question that we can go, oh, well, we can work on that later. Hi, I'm Arish Thompson. I'm Robert. This is my phone. And this is mainly private media. There's so much private media on here from the streamers, from this, and the downloaders and the media platforms, and it is filled with misinformation and disinformation. How do you run a national debate on that? You do need a public media space that's owned by Canadians, it's for Canadians, on which we talk to each other. And that's why CBC Radio Canada is there to make sure that you only see fact-based journalism. And yes, we present all opinions, but most importantly, if this is public, if it belongs to Canada, it's where we speak to each other. It's where Lethbridge, Alberta talks to Moncton, New Brunswick, which talks to Thunder Bay, Ontario, which talks to Parrsville, Nova Scotia. And if we face a place where we're in the middle of the tariff wars, we're in the middle of the big friendly country to the south has suddenly turned on us and really wants us. We need a space where we can talk about that, where we decide what are we going to do as a nation. That's not going to happen in the private spaces. That's only going to happen in a public media space. So that's why you got to support it. Now the PCs, they want to defund CBC English. Is that what we really want? So we have to talk about this. This is not a question that we can go, oh, well, we can work on that later. This is a question that we have to talk about right now because we're going to vote on it really soon.
I'm going to defund CBC. That's my commitment.
Okay. Now, one of those reasons I am pro not defunding the CBC is because what he just said. Poilievre wants to defund the English CBC, which means Alberta and British Columbia, who already feel very isolated, and those people in the far north of Ontario who feel very isolated are going to feel more isolated because there's no public organization, no CBC that speaks for them. Oh, I won't defund Radio Canada, but I'm going to defund the English CBC. Well, Alberta already has a problem with Pierre Trudeau having made Canada a bilingual country back in the 70s. They have never forgiven them, which I'm sorry, from my perspective, get over it. But that part's irrelevant. And if we're going to sit here and defund the English-speaking part, but leave the French part, let's make the poor Albertans feel even worse, or the people in BC, or Manitoba, or Saskatchewan, like make them feel even worse. So that's why I'm very, very pro not defunding the CBC, and that's one of those big ones that I'm against with Poilievre, is that he wants to do that, and that's been his only big policy that I've heard him scream about, is let's defund the CBC. Now the other one is somebody, i.e. CBC, did this for me, and now I can, I don't have to do all the dirty work. So here it goes. They have literally laid out everything and what each of the parties represents and what each of the parties talks about. So this top one is climate change and energy. The Liberals cut consumer carbon pricing before the campaign. They plan to introduce incentives to help families invest in clean energy. The Conservatives would repeal all carbon pricing, including industrial emitters. They would boost incentives for businesses that reduce emissions and promote clean energy. The party hasn't announced its carbon emission reduction target. The NDP says it's cut $18 billion in oil and gas subsidies, but did not specify which. Okay, so there's one of them. Okay, I'm just flipping down to some of these. Okay, guys, housing, there it is. Liberals, Conservatives, NDP. Nice part about this is The Bloc is there, the Green is there, and the People's Party is there. So everybody's is there. I'm not sure with People's Party how stop accepting new permanent residents until a housing crisis has cooled down. That one makes sense. Okay, immigration, healthcare, guns, defense. My other thing. Yeah. Do you have a problem with the Liberals on that one? My precious little Liberals. They keep changing that date. However, they have years ago re-looked at this one, revisited where the U.S. built our jets would come from. They just, Trudeau was like, no, there has to be another place to do this. Why is everything in the U.S.? But having said that, they've also built us some other ships. We have ships coming out. Okay, cost of living. So it's all there. I will put this link in the description like usual. Now, I know there was a pet peeve that somebody screamed about because I just see got jobs here. Now, here's some good ones for increased jobs. Provide an apprenticeship grant of up to $8,000 for registered apprentices. They would double the funding to union training and innovative programs from 25 to 50 million annually to increase access to union-led training. Conservatives would 4,000, and they would fund training calls to develop 350,000 workers in over 5 years. So you can see that they have the plans there, that somebody has done the dirty work for me, which is very, very nice. And back to just my lovely little face here. Okay, so those are your two things that you can look at this week. Please keep things in mind. Mine is, excuse me, just get out and vote. I know there's people that go to the ABC and say anything but conservatives. Mine is, I don't care. Just get out and vote. And those people, I know people who don't vote, but they also say, I don't have the right to complain because I didn't vote. And if you're not going to vote, then you don't have a right to complain. That's sort of my thing. Okay, so there we go. Please watch misinformation. Disinformation. Misinformation is a redirect. Disinformation is what you and I would call blatant lies, right? Make sure you're going and following it and finding it out. If, like I said, if you go to a YouTube channel and you're questioning, like you've seen anything on one of those posts, and it's a survey, click on the more, and it will put down where it comes from. It may be generalistic and just say the United States. It may just say Canada or the UK, but at least you know, like that poll I keep finding, it's from Turkey. Well, that's a problem, because what business do they have, right? And Justin said years ago, he said there is international interference in our elections. And he means things like that. It means things like Elon Musk should not open his mouth about who the Prime Minister of the UK is. Donald Trump should not be going up to Wayne Gretzky and telling him to go and get elected as the next Prime Minister of Canada, which is not how it works, but that's okay. That's international interference. But there's the more subtle ones that are sending the messages out to you and I as the voters on which way we should vote. So go to those websites, go to those links, got honest questions about how that party can help your riding, then go find your candidates and physically, literally ask them. Okay? Years ago, the candidates would travel all over the place. So I lived in the Northwestern Ontario in the far reaches, and our candidates from Kenora would toddle their way up to Red Lake, and I got to meet them, and I got to chit chat with them. LOL, the Conservative guy never made it up. The NDP guy made it up a couple of times, and the Liberal guy is the only time I never voted Liberal, because I asked him, it was provincial, and I got chit-chatting with him, and I told him I was a teacher. He said, oh, I used to be a teacher, but that was too much work and not enough pay. And my brain went, oh, thank God you quit. I said, okay, then what happened? Then what did you do? And he said, oh, then I became a lawyer, which was enough money, but too much work. So I decided to become a politician. Okay, didn't tell him to his face, but I didn't vote for him. So go see your candidates, get to chit chat with them, see if they are somebody you want representing your riding. Get in there and find out. We have 2 weeks left. Okay. And then support CBC. It's our voice. You can go on CBC. You can get your CBC offices from wherever you want. You can get the national, which is literally the national, and has national news and Canadian, the regional news and world news. But there's CBC Newfoundland, there's CBC Ontario, there's CBC BC, etc., etc. So remember, it represents all of us. Okay, there we go, guys. Enjoy, have a good time. And if you're in Southern Ontario, enjoy the weather. Take care, guys. See you next time.